The Bible speaks of monsters that roam the deep. But there is a creature more dangerous than any beast. Not because it destroys, but because it burns away everything unholy. On the day a king died, a prophet saw fire that speaks, wings that tremble before God, and a holiness so powerful it shook heaven and earth. This is not the story of Leviathan. This is the story of the Seraphim, the fire that stands before God. The year King Uzziah died was a year stitched with sorrow. Judah stood uneasy, like a nation holding its breath after a long reign had ended. Streets whispered uncertainty, priests murmured prayers with trembling lips, and the people wondered who would steady the throne now that the familiar crown had fallen. It was in this moment of earthly instability that heaven chose to reveal its unshakable rule. Isaiah entered the temple not expecting glory but seeking understanding. His heart carried the weight of a people drifting from righteousness, and his spirit felt the dull ache of unanswered questions. The air was heavy with incense, yet suddenly that heaviness gave way to something far greater. The veil between worlds thinned. The ordinary cracked open. In a flash not measured by time, Isaiah was no longer merely standing on stone floors. He was lifted, drawn upward not by hands, but by the will of God, into a realm where human language fails. Before him rose a throne, vast beyond scale, high beyond imagination. It was not simply placed in heaven, it defined heaven. From it flowed authority, light, and life itself. The train of the Lord's robe filled the temple, cascading like rivers of glory. Each fold carried weight, not of cloth, but of dominion. The atmosphere trembled, not from fear alone, but from the overwhelming presence of holiness. This was not the silence of emptiness, it was the stillness before eternity speaks. Isaiah's breath caught in his chest. His mind strained to hold what his eyes beheld. This was not a vision meant to comfort. It was a revelation meant to transform. Heaven was not distant. God was not absent. The throne was occupied. And then Isaiah became aware that he was not alone. Above the throne, moving like living flames against the brilliance of God's glory, were beings unlike anything formed of earth. They hovered, not resting, not tiring. Their presence intensified the air, making it burn with sacred power. The heavens did not merely open that day, they shook. They were called Seraphim, the burning ones. Not born of soil or sea, not shaped from dust or breath, but forged in fire that does not destroy. Their existence was a testimony that God's holiness is alive, active, and uncontainable. Each seraph possessed 6 wings, each with divine purpose. With 2 wings they covered their faces, not from shame, but from reverence. Even these mighty beings could not gaze fully upon the unveiled glory of the Lord. With 2 wings they covered their feet, acknowledging that no created being stands equal before the Eternal. And with 2 wings they flew, ever ready, ever moving in obedience. Their bodies burned like coals drawn fresh from the altar, radiant yet controlled, powerful yet restrained. The fire did not consume them, it defined them. They were not chaos. They were ordered forged in flame. Every movement they made was precise, purposeful, and holy. These were not ornaments of heaven. They were not symbols meant merely to inspire awe. The seraphim were guardians, watchful sentinels of God's purity. Where they hovered, corruption could not survive. Where they spoke, truth thundered. Isaiah felt his own humanity shrink beneath their presence. Compared to their brilliance, his righteousness seemed like ash. Compared to their obedience, his efforts felt weak and fractured. Yet the seraphim did not turn toward him in judgment. Their attention was fixed on the throne. They existed for God alone. Their flames illuminated the truth: holiness is not passive. It moves. It burns. It separates what is pure from what is impure. The seraphim were living proof that God's presence is not merely beautiful, it is dangerous to unclean hearts and life-giving to those he chooses to purify. Isaiah realized then that heaven was not governed by comfort, but by holiness. And these fiery beings were its keepers. Then the seraphim spoke. Or rather, they cried out, their voices colliding in perfect harmony. They did not speak softly, nor did they shout in chaos. Their proclamation was worship forged in fire. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts, the whole earth is full of his glory. Each word carried weight. Each declaration struck creation like a hammer upon stone. As they spoke, the foundations of the temple trembled. Doorposts shook as though recognizing the authority of the one being praised. Smoke filled the sanctuary, thick and swirling, a visible sign that the presence of God was overwhelming the space. This was not a song for performance. It was a proclamation of reality. God was holy beyond measure, holy in essence, holy in action, holy in eternity. The threefold cry echoed through realms seen and unseen, binding heaven and earth under one truth. Isaiah felt the vibration in his bones. Worship here was not background sound, it was force. The seraphim's song did not merely honor God, it enforced the order of creation. Holiness was being declared, and everything else had to respond. In that moment, Isaiah understood that worship is not about emotion. It is alignment. When heaven worships, the universe falls into place. When holiness is proclaimed, falsehood collapses. The seraphim did not grow tired. Their song did not fade. Eternity itself seemed to breathe in rhythm with their cry. This was the sound of heaven's economy. The currency of glory, endlessly exchanged. And standing in the midst of it, Isaiah felt utterly undone. Isaiah's strength failed him. The weight of holiness pressed upon his soul until his confidence shattered. He saw himself clearly, not as a prophet, not as a servant, but as a man marked by imperfection. Woe is me, he cried, his voice breaking beneath the sound of heavenly worship. I am undone. In the presence of absolute purity, there was no room for pretense. Isaiah recognized the truth he had long preached, no unclean thing can stand before the Lord. His lips, once instruments of prophecy, now felt polluted. His people, chosen yet rebellious, seemed exposed in the blazing light of God's throne. Isaiah did not fear punishment alone. He feared annihilation. Fire stood before him, and he knew that fire consumes what cannot endure it. He expected judgment. He expected the end. Yet heaven did not move to destroy him. The seraphim continued their cry. The throne remained steady. God did not speak words of condemnation. Instead, something unexpected unfolded, a mercy hidden within holiness itself. Isaiah learned then that conviction is not the same as rejection. The fire that reveals sin is the same fire that can remove it. One seraphim broke formation. The movement was deliberate, purposeful. Heaven held its breath. The burning one descended, not in wrath, but in obedience. In its hand were tongs, gripping a coal taken from the altar, fire that had touched the presence of God. This was no ordinary flame. It carried holiness, authority, and cleansing power. Isaiah could not flee. He could not resist. The seraphim approached, and with gentle precision, pressed the burning coal to Isaiah's lips. The fire seared. But it did not destroy. It burned away guilt, not flesh. Pain gave way to release. The impurity that Isaiah feared was consumed, leaving purity in its place. Your guilt is taken away, the seraphim declared. Your sin is atoned for. Fire had done what fear could not. Isaiah was not merely spared, he was transformed. The seraphim withdrew, their task complete. They sought no praise. They returned to their station above the throne, continuing their eternal worship. Their purpose had never been destruction, it was preparation. Then God spoke. The voice was not thunderous, yet it carried infinite authority. Whom shall I send? The Lord asked. And who will go for us? The question was not asked out of need, but invitation. Heaven sought a willing vessel. Isaiah, newly purified, no longer hid in fear. Fire had refined him. Holiness had restored him. His voice, once trembling, now rang with resolve. "Here am I," he answered. "Send me." The seraphim bore witness. The throne accepted the offering. A prophet was commissioned, not by human approval, but by divine fire. The seraphim continue their work beyond Isaiah's vision. They stand as eternal reminders that holiness guards the throne of God. They proclaim His purity, enforce His order, and prepare His servants. They are not warriors of conquest, but of sanctification. Where they move, corruption flees. Where they serve, calling is clarified. They burn so that others may live. Isaiah returned to earth, but he was never the same. The fire of heaven lingered in his words, his courage, and his obedience. The seraphim still cry, "Holy." The altar still burns. And God still calls. Only those willing to be touched by the fire can answer. Isaiah left the temple, but the fire never left him. The seraphim still cry, "Holy." The throne is still occupied. And the fire still burns, not to destroy, but to purify, to call, and to send. The question is not whether God still speaks. The question is whether we are willing to stand where the fire falls. Like this video, subscribe for more epic Bible stories. And share it with someone who needs to remember that God's throne is still occupied.